Manchester City 1, Southampton 0. Adam, just start off with the overall feeling from the contest because it wasn't necessarily the most glamorous of victories, let's put it that way. It wasn't also a game there where you sort of say City got away from it feeling maybe a bit lucky. Southampton didn't really create many chances, but it was on an knife edge up until that 90th minute. And yeah, just general feelings from that slender victory.
Well, that one certainly wasn't game of the weekend. Definitely
For
nowhere
sure.
near it. But I think it's kind of similar to what we've seen in the past with City playing against the lesser teams in the league, where yeah, surely they didn't park the bus like a lot of teams would, including supposed title rivals Arsenal. Um, but and yeah, I think the feeling is that Russell Martin and Southampton deserve the credit for how they played because a lot of teams would come and park the bus, and I think City weren't expecting that, and they didn't really they weren't prepared for that really, I suppose, but they did. So yeah, as always, City did keep the ball, not as well as they normally do because Southampton, as I say, uh,
Mm.
executed their game pretty well. But we did have our chances, and we should have had more goals. And another day we come out of this having won 4-0 if we've buried a few of those chances, and it's a different conversation. But I think uh, the Saints only had like the one or two chances on the counter attack. So yeah, I'd say it's a bit concerning how it was only 1-0. I mean, maybe I'm being picky because we just put five past Sparta Prague and I was expecting us to put a few more away against bottom of the league, but that's like I think I make it 3 wins in a row that we've only won by a goal, and we've not won by two or more since August against West Ham. So I think it's a
Mm.
little bit concerning, and I'm sure we'll come on to it later, just in terms of the bigger picture, but. I think the bottom line is it's another win. We're still unbeaten, and after the Arsenal Liverpool result, we're top of the league, and it is in our hands. We just got to stay there for now. Keep those wins coming.
For sure, for sure. Joe, City had 22 shots. They had 8 shots on targets. They missed, I think it was 4 big chances. They had an XG of just under 3. They were the better team and they deserved to win, but it was attritional at times. And I'm stuck between thinking there's a wider problem, which we'll get onto, and sort of discussing the ins and outs of that, and just sort of thinking City didn't really have to go beyond third gear. And I wonder if Southampton had really started to press and looked like they were going to get a leveler, maybe that would have changed and we see City, hammer it. It felt like they were just happy to go through the motions, get the early goal, and not consolidate it in the sort of the bunkering down and defending type. But did you get what I mean? It felt like a little bit of a box ticking exercise for both teams who kind of knew the result was going to be a City win. It didn't really matter how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, I think all you have to do is look at City's bench the last couple of games and get an idea of what they're trying to do, right? They're obviously a very thin squad at the moment. They were thin going into the season and they've been hit with an injury bug. I think at this point, it's really if you can get an early goal, which obviously City did at that point, it's, you know, in-game rest as we like to always say about City and just kind of maintain that lead. I mean, I think it may have even made its way to halftime, but deep into the first half, Southampton had more possession than City. So, like Adam said, full credit needs to go to Russell Martin's side. I thought they were brilliant, given the complete gap in talent. I mean, they played phenomenal football in that first half in particular, but it was a very odd game. I think City actually played better than they may be getting credit for. Like you said with those numbers, right? Just under 3 xG. I think on another day, Holland probably has a hat trick. He probably
Mm.
scores the hardest chance he has and misses a few of the easier ones. So,
Well,
again, it's
should we come on to that because it was probably the one moment of quality, certainly from Erling Haaland, who just seems to be having Joe a competition with himself to score the most outrageous sort of goals. Not necessarily like well, yes, acrobatic, but his dexterity is incredible. Obviously, the cross comes from Nunes on the left hand side, who's having a fantastic week and has really stepped up at a time when City needed him to, which is great to see. But I think a lot of, well, probably every single person on planet Earth at that point, ball goes in the back of the net, 5-0. 5 minutes in, City against Southampton. You'd have bet all the money in the world that it isn't going to end that way. But still, a fantastic goal and fair play. He turned out to be the match winner.
Yeah, I think when that first goal went in, I'm thinking, all right, get your money on 3-4, maybe 5-0. It certainly felt that way, but I think a big thing that I mean, it's obviously being discussed, but maybe not enough, is, just how much Haaland has relied on Kevin De Bruyne's approach to crosses, which is a really niche thing, I guess, to bring up. But, typically he is a right footer from the right side on that kind of inside space. And with him being out, now you're getting Foden kind of feeding through the middle. Nunez, a right-footed player off to the left. Savio, a left-footed player off the right. He's getting all these different deliveries, and I wonder for him, and obviously he's a prolific goal scorer. He can score any which way, but I wonder how much of it's just an adjustment to the way that he's getting fed crosses, passes, etc. I think Savio in particular had 2 chances for Haaland that, again, on another day, he really needs to be burying. And hopefully Kev comes back soon, but I think as the more games pile up, he'll get more used to that and we'll continue to see the goals. But it was a really bizarre 90 minutes for him, and by probably the 75th minute he looked absolutely drained. So I think to just get the goal and have it be enough was crucial, especially given the Liverpool and Arsenal result.
For sure, which obviously at that point it didn't know, but one team was going to drop points in that game regardless. Thankfully, it turned out to be both. Adam, just on Nunez, because he's a player who I felt like he was sort of due a run in the team, and this sort of run of fixtures certainly pointed towards that, and he's getting it. And I think to say, even though injuries have been quite rough for City, but Guardiola in the past has shunned players who have been on the peripheries of the team before. And, look at Calvin Phillips, for example, when Roger went down, he did everything but start Calvin Phillips in a game of consequence. Do you think he's making a claim to have this left wing position? Not necessarily his own, but going forward, is it somewhere, if City do have Grealish or Doku, he can still play? Because I think he looks so suited to it, and you lose the risk part where if he gives the ball away in midfield, which I think a couple of goals in his time as a City player have stemmed from, obviously conceding, but you lose that part, and he does bring a nice balance. At least that's how I felt it looked.
Yeah, some of his best skills come when carrying the ball, and in the left wing you're going to have a lot of space, and that's where he's been thriving recently, and it's been good to see. When an injury crisis, I know the word crisis gets thrown about a bit, but we have got a fair few players down right now, like 5 outfielders on the bench. When a crisis like this does pop up, you need to take your chances when you've been on the fringes of the team, and he's done that, and he was rewarded with the start against Southampton. And I think with Grealish and Doku still out, and even with De Bruyne out, I think that is opening up quite nicely for him, and he's taking those chances. And I think coming back to what Joe said with Haaland adapting to those delivery types, I've actually crunched the numbers a bit, and Nunez has got 9 assists in 39 games for City. 1 was for John Stones last week, 2 were for Julian Alvarez, 1 was for Micah Hamilton last season, but 5 have been for Erling Haaland against Forest, Young Boys, Sparta Prague, West Ham, and Southampton. The last 3 coming this season, 2 in the last week as well. So I think he's developing a bit of a connection there with Haaland, and he always seems to be setting him up right now. So I think that could be definitely an option for City. I think Grealish, for me, would be obviously starting left winger if he was fit, but Nunez, if he keeps this up, then he's definitely in with a shout, because I think when he's playing like this, it's hard to make a case to drop him, I guess.
Absolutely. One player who has been criticised for not linking up with Haaland enough, Joe, is Phil Foden, and it was great to see him back in the team. Thought he played well. I did some player ratings after the match and gave him a 6 out of 10 because I felt like it was par. He didn't really light the world up. He had some tidy finishes. I think there was a bit of skill that did the rounds on social media where he's sort of juggling it in the air, which was great. Was I too harsh? And you can say it if you want, but look, Southampton are a talented team. The way they've been set up and the way that they've coached is, in my opinion, great. But I wouldn't necessarily say they're a good team. I was kind of wanting a little bit more from Phil Foden, I felt like, in that game, and it didn't necessarily come.
I think a 6 score is harsh, but I think, the level that we expect from Player of the Year, Phil Foden, means it's fair in some ways. I mean, watching the game, if you had asked me a score at full time, I probably would have said 6.5 or so. But going back, kind of rewatching the highlights, looking at some of the numbers, I mean, he still created the most amount of chances in the team. I still think he had an impact on the game. again, which is why it was just such a weird match, because sometimes it felt so stale, and then you take a look back and digest, and you're like, well, there was a fair bit of action. So I think the biggest thing with Phil right now is just getting the minutes in his legs, getting him back into the side. As far as him being, you kind of segued with him not feeding Haaland enough. I think even he is getting a lot better at kind of taking the Mateo Kovacic approach of trying to find the space in behind. But ultimately, he's going to provide you the goals that you need when Haaland's out, or even when Haaland's in. To me, he's far more of a goal scorer than a goal creator, which is totally fine. It's just, what are you going to get from around those players? So you have obviously Nunez on the left, like Adam had touched upon, has created a lot, and I think Savio's really kind of growing into this side as well. So for me, I'm not looking at Phil expecting him to lead the team in assists or even be second in assists. I think he just needs to impact the game with, creating chances for himself, for others, and he always just does a little bit of everything. So I think a 6 is probably a little bit harsh, but again, he is held to a very high standard, so I understand.
That was the first part of the show. If you want more, make sure to check the City Ramble wherever you get your podcasts from.